friends, and welcome back to the Wardenburn Reads YouTube channel. I'm Emily, and here on my channel I love to talk about cozy, wholesome books. Welcome back to another weekly epilogues video. I missed last week because frankly we had a horrible week last week. It was just very stressful. There was some family drama that was going on, and it was absurd and hurtful and ridiculous and just this whole mix of things. And so I was hardly sleeping because of stress and anxiety and my baby, like both of those things, and then my husband wasn't doing very well. It was just not a good week. So this week it has been just full-on recovery mode. I'm trying to come back from all of that. So that being said, I didn't get that much reading done. I hardly read it all last week, and yeah, we're a week into August and I have only finished 2 books, which is not normal for me. By this point, by this far into a month, I've usually finished around between the 3 and 5 book mark. But yeah, that's what happens with life sometimes, and it is what it is. For today's video, I thought I would quickly share a couple of the books that I read just kind of in like the tail end of July, before Crazy Week, and then the 2 books that I have thus far finished in August. I'm expecting and hoping that today's video will be on the shorter side, on like the 10-15 minute mark, so we'll see. Last time we spoke, I think I was in the process of reading Matilda's Wedding by Betty Neels. That one was a pretty sweet book. I did enjoy it. And then I also read Love Can Wait by Betty Neels. And I remember that one being pretty good and pretty enjoyable. I think I was kind of getting a little bit annoyed with Betty Neels because I'd read 2 or 3 of them where the main guy character was just so domineering and making all the decisions without talking to the girl and just kind of running her life to a degree. And for whatever reason, I was just not in the headspace, and I just not enjoying it very much. So I feel that there's some of Betty Neels' books where that's much more exaggerated, and some of her books where they're much more normal. The one that I just finished, Roses and Champagne, this is an August book. I finished that one yesterday, actually. That one had a much more reasonable main guy character. Oops, dropping my hair clippies. And so I enjoyed it a lot more. I actually think that Roses and Champagne is another one of my favorite. Not like my top favorites, but one of my favorite Betty Neels books. But anyway, so after I read the Matilda's Wedding and Love Can Wait, I'd had a spat of like, what was that, 4 Betty Neels books, and so I was ready for something else. One of you lovely viewers had mentioned in one of your comments on one of the videos that you were reading your first Georgette Hare, and I was just like, oh my goodness, I haven't read one of her books in such a long time. So I picked up The Reluctant Widow by Georgette Hare, and I believe that was actually like the second Georgette Hare book that I read, and I haven't read it since then. So it's been like probably 2 or 3 years since I read it, and it still kind of had that like strong guy character who's kind of running everything, but Georgette Hare's writing is just so funny and so witty, and her descriptions of things, it's a really fun book. I cannot remember the main girl's name because I read it just before life got crazy, or kind of in the midst of the beginnings of craziness, and it's basically a young lady, and she used to be wealthier. She's fallen on harder times because her dad died in this big scandalous circumstances, and so she's a governess, and so she's traveling down to take up a new post. There's a little bit of a mix-up, and she ends up getting into the carriage for somebody else, and then she's taken to this house and meets with this guy or this man, and finds out that there's been a whole mistake, and he had advertised for a lady to come and marry his scoundrel of a cousin so that the main guy character wouldn't inherit said cousin's estate. There's an accident that happens, and the cousin is on his deathbed, and the main guy still wants him to marry this girl, and so even though she wasn't supposed to be there in the first place, he just kind of, to some degree, railroads her into marrying this guy, because he's like, look, he's gonna die, this is gonna take care of you, you're gonna have money, like, it's all good. And then, of course, it sets off a whole series of events, and the main, I cannot remember their names, but main male character, his family is hilarious. He's got some younger brothers, and they're really entertaining, and it's a good Georgette Heyer book. I really enjoyed it. And then I finally picked up Mrs. Lorimer's Quiet Summer by Molly Clavering, and this one is just so sweet. I have a feeling that in like 10-15 years I'm gonna enjoy it even more, because it's about Mrs. Lorimer or Lorimer, I think it's Lorimer, who is living in a small English village, and it's kind of the tale of all of her children are grown, most of them are married, and her trying to navigate being a mother to grown children and helping them with their problems without over helping them. Like, they need to stand on their own feet and deal with their own problems, but she, as the mom, still wants to help them. And so it was just a really fun book to read. Like, there's all these different things that happen, and different miscommunications between her daughter and her husband, and one daughter gets sick at one point, and then her youngest son, she's really worried about him because he's had a heartbreak over some girl, and it's like this whole thing, and it was just so cozy and sweet, like the perfect thing to read. And I can't remember now, but I think, I need to double check, but I think it starts in like June or July, so it was the perfect time of year to read it. I absolutely loved it. Definitely something I'm going to reread. And like I said, I think in like 10 to 15 years, if I reread it for, like the 10th time, I would love it so much more. Because right now I've got like little kids, and my mom always said, little kids have little problems, big kids have big problems. And so I think it's a book that I'm going to recommend to my mom to read, because I think that she would really enjoy it. But yeah, it was just very much like the cozy English village life. Of course, there's some romance in there, and it's just the relationship among people. And honestly, I think this might be my favorite Molly Clavering book that I've read thus far. I don't know. Near Neighbors and Mrs. Lorimer's Quiet Summer, I think, are my top favorites. Which, to be fair, I think I've only read 3-4 of her books so far, so that's pretty good. 50% of her books that I have read have been excellent. But highly recommend that one. It was really, really cozy, and just her husband is Mr. Lorimer, or is he Colonel? I think he's a colonel or something. He's hilarious. Like, there's this bit where there's some nosy village lady that's coming to visit, and he's sneaking out of the garden out through the backyard because he doesn't want to meet her. And he's really funny, but like so smart. Like, there's a bit where Mrs. Lorimer realizes that she has to leave some of the children's problem to her husband, and he's able to talk to them and say, look, like, knock it off, get your life together. And it's just a really sweet moment of one where the kid realizes that their dad has something worth listening to, and the wife realizes that he can help with sorting out the kids' problems. All around, it was a really, really nice book, and I heartily recommend it. It's so wholesome. Like, it's just, I love reading books like that now too, because it can give me some insights on my own motherhood journey, and things that I can hopefully be a little bit more aware of now, because like as a parent, you're parenting and mothering or fathering actual like individual people, as well as children that you have to train and direct and teach and all of that. And it's this weird mix of the fact that you have to let them be their own person, but also teach them how to be a person. And it's just, I love reading books like that where it kind of talks about some of those things, not in detail, but of being a parent and navigating family life and stuff. Like, yeah, I really enjoyed it. I do recommend it. So the last book that I have to talk about is actually, again, another one that one of you lovely viewers recommended. Thank you so much. It is White Boots by Noel Streatfeild, who is the same author that wrote Ballet Shoes, and she wrote The Quiet Summer, which I spoke about in one of my earlier videos this year. And I did not like The Quiet Summer at all, so I was kind of a little bit hesitant of reading any more of Noel Streatfeild's books because I loved The Ballet Shoes growing up. It was one of my favorite books, and I really should reread that one. And I've heard really lovely things about a lot of her other like shoe books, but I've never actually read them for myself, most of them. So I was kind of, again, after this horrible week, stressful week of life problems. Like, again, nobody's dead. Nobody's deathly ill. It could have been so much worse. But it was just such high level of stress that I just wasn't in the mood for reading anything. Like, I kept trying to find a book to read as like a distraction, but my brain, it was not enough for my brain to just like shut off and shift and read this book. And so it's been a lot to try and get back into my reading groove. So I read this book and I loved it. It was so wholesome, family life, cozy, not quite coming of age to some degree because it's like the pre-coming to age. Like, it's a story of Harriet, and she had a long sickness, and so she's just kind of weak, and the doctor recommends that she take up skating, ice skating, to kind of help strengthen her body and speed up her recovery. And so she goes to take ice skating, and while she's there she meets this basically child star skater, Lala, I never really knew how to pronounce it in the book, but she meets this other girl. They're both like 10, and so then the story unfolds from there, and talks about, it's all about skating, ice skating, and I love that because I loved ballet when I was growing up. I also really loved the idea of skating and figure skating, so it was really fun to read it from that perspective of loving stuff like that. And it was just a really sweet story of like friendship, and then there's the family dynamic because Harriet comes from a family, she has 3 brothers, 2 older, 1 younger, and her mom and dad, and they're kind of they're pretty poor, like they're in straitened circumstances, and they just kind of have to really make do, and yeah, they just don't have a lot of worldly wealth, but they are so wealthy in their family love and their family dynamic. Like, her brothers are hilarious. She's got a really like math smart, brainy brother, and the oldest brother really wants to like help their dad figure out how to make their family shop more successful. And then the youngest brother is kind of vain and silly, and he knows he's good looking and that he can make people like him because he's good looking, and it just, the dynamics and everything were just so familiar in that I have a lot of siblings, but also just so sweet and loving and kind, and their mother, oh my goodness, I absolutely loved Harriet's mother. She was just so, she just seemed so able to kind of roll with the punches that life gave them, and also just really love and care for her husband and her family, and so wise, and I loved her as a character. And then poor Lala, I don't know how you pronounce her name. She is an orphan who lives with her aunt and her step uncle, and her father was like a super famous figure skating person, and so the aunt has this obsession that she must carry, like Lala must carry on her father's heritage, or her father's, I'm looking for a specific word. I can't think of it, but that she must be like a world champion skater and continue what her father started, sort of a thing. And so she's obsessive about making her niece like do all the ice skating stuff, and she has ballet lessons and fencing lessons and all this stuff. And so it's just, I wasn't particularly fond of the aunt character, but I don't think you're really supposed to be. She's kind of obsessive and not very nice, especially in contrast with Harriet's mother. Like, it was a really lovely book, and it was just what I needed to kind of get back into reading a bit more, because it was after I finished that one that I picked up Roses and Champagne by Betty Neels, and then I am currently reading Philomena's Miracle by Betty Neels, and then I have on there, I also have Thursday's Child, and I think it's Far to Go or something. It's a duology by Noel Streatfeild, which was also recommended by the same person who mentioned White Boots. So I'm really excited to potentially dive into that. But yeah, those are all the books that I have to talk about for the last couple of weeks. I hope that you are enjoying kind of these last few weeks of summer. I'm pretty ready for fall time, but also just trying to embrace the season that I'm in. We have a pretty busy August ahead of us because both my boys have birthdays coming up, so we have birthday parties, and it's just going to be busy and a lot, and I'm okay with that. With all of the stress and drama that has happened, it has made me extra grateful for my husband and his sanity. It's made me very grateful for my family and our kids and my siblings and my husband's parents. Like, it has just made me really grateful for the people that I have in my life. So there's that. That's a little tangent. I hope that you are all doing well, that you are reading some lovely cozy books, and if you have any that you're reading right now that you think are very cozy, stress-free, drama-free, wholesome, I'd love for you to recommend them, because I feel like I'm in like the tiniest bit of a reading slump, and I just need some lovely cozy books to get me out of that. So if you have any suggestions, I'd love to hear them. Thank you as always for tuning in. And one quick thing, there's a lovely viewer who has commented on, I believe, my last like 2 or 3 videos mentioning something about sending me a Betty Neels book. And of course, I would absolutely love to have the Betty Neels book. I have responded to this particular viewer's comments in the last few videos, but I'm not sure if it's being seen, so I wanted to mention it here in the video. If that is you and you're trying to get in touch with me, I'll have my email here on the screen. If you would just send me an email and we can get all the details figured out. I promise I'm not trying to ignore you. I have responded to the comments, but YouTube comments are kind of hard to have a conversation in, so please feel free to send me an email, and we'll work it out, whatever it is. Yeah, thank you all so much for supporting this channel and liking and commenting and subscribing and all the lovely things that you do. I do so very much appreciate it. And with all of that, I will see you on the next one. Bye.